meeting to order. We'll go ahead and skip through the introductions if that's okay. I don't really think that's a necessary item. Item 2 is approval of the September 14th, 2023 meeting minutes. Motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Item 3, citizens' opportunity to address council committee on stormwater issues. Did we have anybody sign up this morning?
I haven't had.
Anybody in the audience? Mr. Freeman, do you have?
Here to answer any questions you might have regarding Bass Street when you get to it.
Okay, thank you. All right, we'll go to item 4, new business. Equipment and vehicle leasing. Mr. Smith.
Yes, first off, apologies to the committee for not getting this information in your packet. We did email it out, this memo out to you last night, and then I gave you a hard copy there this morning. At the request of Councilman Spencer, staff was asked to investigate other fleet replacement options. It's specifically related to our larger vehicles and our equipment. I've outlined 3 scenarios here based on 4 tandem axle dump trucks. It's not that we're asking for 4 tandem axle dump trucks at this time. We just use that as a model to explain different options. And the reason we chose those 4 is we currently have 6 tandem axle dump trucks in our fleet. 2 are newer. And as the committee will remember from the budget process, we have 2 of them with issues involving the frame, and then 2 more they're past their service life, both of those 2, and then there's also 2 more that are similar age. But we've not experienced the same frame issues with those other 2 pieces of equipment. So we use those 4 as kind of a model to explain purchasing options. This isn't, again, not a request for 4 tandem axle dump trucks at this time. Option 1 obviously is our current model. It's just buying them with capital purchase money. In this situation, those 4 vehicles would cost about $840,000. Then we looked at option 2, which is again kind of what we're doing now, where we would get 1 each year for 4 successive years. And I made some assumptions that we'd see a 5% inflationary cost on that equipment each year, that they would get that much more expensive. In that scenario, that would cost about $905,000, which is about a $65,000 add if we were to buy them all today. Now that's an estimate, that 5%, but I did go back and look. The last time we bought a tandem axle dump truck was in 2018, and it was $145,000. So to give you an idea, now, there was a couple of factors that caused that to really increase. There was one, an emissions change, which did cost add a lug cost in all large diesel equipment. And then there was a pandemic and supply chain issues. So, if you were to work out what we had seen since the last time we bought them, it was about 7.75% increase every year if it had been applied each year. But I think that is high. I can't believe that the industry is going to sustain at that kind of an inflationary rate. So we use 5%. And then the third option is something that was new to me. I wasn't aware of this. Leanne, with our purchasing agent, knew of a OA contract with the state of Missouri for financing. And it's lease financing, but it's really, to my thinking, my rudimentary thinking, more of just basic financing. You take out a loan, you pay it back either 3 or 5 years. And then they have a rate that's based on whatever the Treasury bill rate is at the time, and then you take out the loan, and so you pay a percentage higher than the Treasury bill rate, whether it be a 3 or 5 year loan. Right now, the Treasury bill, when I looked it up yesterday, was running about 4.75%. So to take out a 5 year loan is 28% above that, which is the interest rate shown there, 6.08%. So if we would take out a 5 year lease on those 5 vehicles, we would end up spending in total payments $966,000, which is an increase of about $126,000 if we were to just buy it today. In other words, $126,000 worth of interest in 5 years. So that gives you some options. Now, however, if we were to do that, the yearly payment would be $193,000, which the city would then have to commit to for the next 5 years, which is actually less than buying one. So there would be some advantages there because we wouldn't see the inflationary change, but we'd be paying more in interest. Again, we're doing this as a demonstration of the model, not necessarily that we would be doing these pieces of equipment, but it would be available for anything that we wanted, whether it be backhoes, et cetera. And our Parks Department has been using it. And if you want to see more details on the actual calculations and the amortization schedules, et cetera, I've included that on the second page. Be happy to answer any questions.
Just a quick question. So like if, my original thought was maybe doing this for our, what I call the heavy construction equipment, skid steers, you know, end loaders, stuff like that. Trying to kind of equate that into these figures, is that what would we be looking at to fulfill your pink sheet items? I believe there's 2 skid steers and 1 track hoe, I think is what's in
Would be similar math, because it's basically a 5-year loan as we understand it. It's just, you can spread it out, you pay the interest.
Yeah, but what I mean is like, you know, $210,000, you know, times 4 is $840. So I mean, that that construction equipment, I mean, I don't know if a skid steer is like $140,000 a piece, and then I mean, I was just trying to.
Yeah, it depends on what piece of equipment's and really, I guess it comes down to if we could, if the council wanted to target, I think, a dollar amount per year, then we could go back and look at all that needs and say, okay, if we had this to work with every year for sure for 5 years, because that's, you know. And then the other thing, I didn't know if you mentioned first, but when I come in a little late, if you fail to make the payment, it's basically a penalty. They just take the equipment back. It's theirs now. And so you just lose it. But if you lock in for a certain dollar amount, then we could go back and tailor, you know, an equipment plan to that.
And I would add that, you know, when we looked at this in 04 and 05, the idea was that there would be a certain dollar amount allocated each year going forward that we would use as kind of as a capital replacement program. And, you know, we might not spend it all this year, but what we didn't spend this year would roll over to next year. And, you know, we could calculate what that dollar amount would be to maintain a fleet at a certain level, whether it be using leasing or the traditional way that we would, you know, are seeing. You know, at the time, you know, that's 04 and 05, that dollar amount was about $600,000 or $700,000. Obviously, it would be a lot different today. You know, we could go through that exercise and come up with a math of what that would look like. I wouldn't say it's easily, but I couldn't do it sitting here right now.
Any other questions for staff regarding this?
This is strictly lease, not with no equity, correct?
No, it's called a lease.
Lease purchase?
It's a lease purchase. But, you know, the penalty is if you don't complete the lease, you lose your equity. If you complete the lease, it's yours.
And the other advantage is the volume bid, essentially state contract. So.
Which is really hard to put I mean, not necessarily hard, but there's a real value to that.
I think so.
You know, we're approved in the program. Apparently, it's really just signing a document that, you know, that their money is in the budget to make the first year's payment. And
But it does lock you in.
it does lock you in.
Right. Well, you're committed. Really so.
Yeah, I was just gonna say generally, if we have the money, I think purchase is the better plan. What I'm more concerned about is the scheduled replacement, so that we're not in a situation where we have to replace a whole bunch at once because they're all not working, or like these 2 that we just had. So, I mean, you have 2 that are past their service life, and if we have the money in the budget, we should replace, I think, at least 1, maybe both of those. But I don't know, just just as preference, I think a scheduled replacement is something to look at and to be implemented.
I think that would certainly be the desirable, and that was our intention. But when you get an 08, recession, council had to make some hard decisions at that time, and unfortunately have never really recovered since then.
I'm not a lease guy in my own personal life, but sometimes there's a place for it. And I think when we can prioritize and say we're committed to, a plan that continually revolves and gets us equipment, and we're not always, caught behind the 8 ball, I think that there's a justification for that. So this was just for information.
Just for information.
But I would like us to chew on this a little bit and then maybe come back to the next meeting and give them our thoughts. So, thank you very much. Unless there's any other questions on it? Okay. Item B, Madison Street improvement discussion. Mr. Bainey.
Yes, thank you. So at the last meeting, we had some discussions about moving some of our sales tax funds to look at improvements along Madison Street. And so part of that discussion was perhaps as simple as an overlay of that street, and then we'd also wanted to discuss, I thought, options to make that area more pleasing as it is south. And so ultimately, we looked and we also talked about, what kind of numbers are we talking about. So just looking at an overlay and then a repair of the sidewalks and handicap ramps, et cetera, as would be needed to make those compliant. We were looking at a number of about $300,000 to do that work. If we wanted to do something more than that, we've got a kind of a sketch here shown on the slide that it kind of shows a possibility of what could be done with that to make that, to change the character of that roadway. That roadway, of course, used to be the old highway. It's quite wide. And so this would address some of those issues that the wideness of that street brings, namely, the speed along that corridor, and which kind of leads to that stop sign, three-way stop kind of at Atchison Street, which is kind of an odd situation. So what you're seeing on the screen is basically an overall narrowing of that street. Right now, the through lanes, there's parking on both sides and 2 through lanes. The through lanes are 13.5 feet wide with 8-foot parking lanes. So what's proposed is to actually remove the parking, generally speaking, on the western side, except but for the area adjacent to and across from Freeman Mortuary, and then also narrow the through lanes down to the 11-foot standard. And so by doing that, you kind of open up some space on the western side that could be used for a wider pedestrian path. And then also we're showing 2 mini roundabouts, one at the intersection with the main driveway into Capital Regional Medical Center, and the other down at Atchison Street. By narrowing the street, that provides some opportunity for some additional landscaping, which could address the issues of aesthetics, as well as providing some area for streetlights or other amenities that might change the character of that street. So with this, kind of a very rough estimate of what this might cost, and this would include basically an overlay of the existing street and then the construction of those roundabouts, is somewhere in the neighborhood of $1.5 to $2 million. And so we've had the opportunity, we talked with Phil on the phone last week about the parking issue, and so we hope we've represented on this drawing what we discussed in that phone conversation. And then we also had the opportunity to meet with Capital Region this past Monday and show them these drawings as well, which were generally relatively well received. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions, staff? Mr. Freeman, would you like to take time to address the committee?
Yes, we actually give you all some history of this situation in Madison Street. The funeral home has been there for over 60 years. I've been there over 50. And to my knowledge, in that entire time, other than patching, there's been no improvements to that street. So obviously, it is the main north-south connector coming in. It highlights Jeff City coming in, and the way it is right now is it's okay, but it certainly could be made better. The one thing that I do want to point out is that turns into a speedway through there. Those people come off of Highway 54, coming down through there, and they come through there at, the speed limit is 30, most of them are double that, some more. The intersection at Atchison, they just go blowing right through that one. It's a miracle, and maybe in that time there has been somebody killed there, but it's a miracle that someone hasn't been killed at that particular intersection. I appreciate the council considering this. I think this is a good plan. I did express to David, I had a concern in the 900 block. I own the whole block on both sides of the street. Obviously, we have a funeral home there. There are times, some of you have been there, where we'll have 400 or 500 people at a visitation or a funeral. If you eliminate the parking on the street, I have an off-street parking lot of 80 some odd cars, but with 400 or 500 people, that would really cause some complications for us, particularly on the larger services that we do have. So that's why I expressed to David my concern about that. The sidewalks, obviously, and across the street on the west side, I've already, if you haven't had a chance to drive by, I've already landscaped that. There's white pines, blue spruces, trees, all that, and we maintain that on the west side of the street directly across from the funeral home. My concern is the parking basically in the 900 to 1000 block. But if you needed to, and I told David, I believe, Capital Region Clinic, not the hospital, is on the opposite side of the street. If you want to start no parking there and take it the rest of the way up, on the other side where Cap Region, that is already all no parking. So you would have that whole 1100 block with no parking, which would hopefully help create that calming effect we were talking about between the roundabout and that would slow that traffic down. And the roundabout at Atchison, I think, would be beneficial if you haven't, once again, if you haven't driven it, it's wavy. And as I said, we've had cars coming through there, and as I said, it's a miracle that someone hadn't been killed there. So as I said, I support this completely. I thank the council for considering Madison Street. And as I said, I'd be happy to answer any questions for you with regards to either my particular issue or the entire project.
Well, I do agree with your assessment that traffic comes off 54 at a high rate of speed. I've attended numerous services at your funeral home, and any time of the day. I mean, I've attended morning, I've attended mid-afternoon, and into the evening, and parking across the street and then getting across the street is like playing Frogger at times. I mean, it is dangerous.
It's like a motor speedway.
So
that's why there's been discussion with the highway department, and we're on the Campo list. I think we're way down on it of and making improvements to that and that area. I don't know if you've talked to the highway department about that or if there's any participation there. But as I said, they're concerned about the calming effect of what the roundabout would help up by Cap Region. That by its nature would slow the traffic down. And then if we put one down there, that would hopefully eliminate that coming through there. Eliminating traffic is not going to stop. It's one of the busiest streets in town. There's no question about it. I think about 15 years ago, there was a traffic study in Missouri Boulevard to one, Witness to. I think this is the 7th busiest street. At that time, was the 7th busiest street in Jefferson City. And I'm pretty sure those numbers haven't gone down.
there is still quite a bit of tractor trailer traffic that comes through that. With having that roundabout there, that should eliminate.
Right, so yes, we would anticipate that would make it less desirable for tractor trailers to come through there. The idea of these roundabouts, and I have a picture, they would be unlike the roundabouts that we have in many places in town right now. So these would be certainly smaller in diameter and would probably have mountable islands in solid central island like you see in the picture. Simply because if there was the need for a larger vehicle to make it through there, the roundabout wouldn't prevent them from doing that. but certainly it would make it less desirable for them to come that way. Right now we have, I think one of our big issues is, the gasoline transport trucks that are trying to make it to, 54 East or 50 East. They're coming from the tank farm over there on the Idlewood. And so they, I think, generally have been cutting through here. We have, no hazardous material signs placed there, but I think that helps some, but certainly making this road narrower, adding these roundabouts would certainly discourage that type of traffic, I would think.
And to be clear, there is an ordinance that prevents those from doing it, but.
That's what I was kind of going to refer to, so, yeah.
Signs.
The sign would help.
HM. What's that?
Obviously, Chief Schofield, the ladder trucks, we do have a high priority with Capital Region, so being able to have access there, is that something you're still comfortable with?
I think we could make something like that work. And I know we also work with Public Works on the hazmat signs and calling some of our local providers that do run the fuel trucks just to remind them on a regular basis. That's something I know that Division Chief Turner and Britt Smith work on quite a bit on a fairly regular basis.
There's a lot of truck traffic coming from the east, 50 East, turning on Madison, cutting across, going south. And I can't give you the number, but there's a lot of truck traffic that does come through there also.
We looked it up, one of our recent counts, higher ones was like 90, I want to say 98 or 9,500 cars, big cars, trucks, whatever, a day, two-way. So it is a high traffic count. Met with the hospital. They have always been concerned about their driveway. That's one of their main concerns. So then we also met with MoDOT traffic this week just to make sure they would support something like this near the off-ramp. They like the idea. They didn't see any red flags or anything like that with their deal and said, we could put some roundabout ahead signs out, even on the highway right away if need be. There is a little crest of a hill right there as you come off of the highway right before their drive. So that, again, that whole conflict of traffic turning in and out of there, things like that. I was driving down the street doing the speed limit right at, and I got passed by a car because I was kind of eyeballing this a couple times this last week just to make sure I wasn't missing something. People are passing me as I'm doing 30 right there. So,
They come.
I was shocked by it actually.
It's amazing. Like
I think this
speedway.
would help definitely discourage that. Like I said, I think David said landscaping, lighting opportunities, make it a different feel, more neighborhood-like.
Well, and not to open up old wounds, but with Monroe Street, shifting the priorities there, and most of us on the council, I think, do believe that shifting it to Madison Street is it appropriate?
Well, yeah, as I said, I appreciate the council considering it. I think it's, as I said, for at least 60 years, there's been no improvements to the street other than patching of holes. So obviously, it is well past its prime, I would say. And then when you get down into the next blocks down, the 800, and we're working diligently with a lot of the homeowners. There's a lot of older homes there, and we're working with them to improve their homes, to improve the looks of those homes. And obviously, then once you get to Dunklin, from there over, that's all been redone, Central Dairy, et cetera. The 100 block of East Dunklin has been completely redone. Just as a point of reference, in the year 2008, in 100 East Dunklin, which is Bush's on the corner, the Echo on the other corner, there were 3 active businesses: Bush's, the barbershop, and the Echo Lounge. The rest of that was all vacant properties. And we were able to get all of those rehabbed with some TIF money, some CID money, et cetera. And we have one building in that block, Mason's Place. I think you all are aware of that. There's concern about that one collapsing, and the building similar to what happened downtown. We found an attorney in Kansas City that has knowledge of how to acquire property, and we had to locate the owner of the property, and he was rather hard to find. I suggested they check the Boone, Callaway, and Cole County jails, and he wasn't there. He was in the Cooper County jail. And so he was served there. and we've got Oscar, and I can't remember his name. It cost about $20,000 in legal fees, which the Southside CID and then Old Town put up the money to get the legal fees. He is, Oscar, and I can't remember his name, is now taking control of that building. It started the rehabilitation of that building. And when it is done, then the owner is told this is how much he has in the improvements, and he can pay that gentleman that, and it would be his. If he does not, then the building. So hopefully they have started the demolition part of it, but hopefully that building within 6-8 months will be another operating and occupied. So then that whole block is now occupied. So we are making improvements on the south side ever so slowly, but we certainly appreciate the council's help on and all of this.
Well, I appreciate the update on that, and it's something we've discussed before, but we need to look at changing code when we're dealing with buildings with shared structures, and having them prove that they've had those inspected to get a permit, I think is something that we need to have a safeguard for taxpayers to
Answer
not
that
have.
question. I know the city has been in that building since they've got control of it. Some of the inspectors, I don't know, gentlemen, and right now it looks, and they are moving to stabilize it. So hopefully within a matter of months, that will be a solid structure, occupied and contributing to the community.
We just don't want another scenario of 100.
Nor do I.
That on the taxpayer's burden, so, absolutely.
So I guess one of the goals of this is, bring you back a couple options, see what the temperature is. This is a city-county project, although we have some county people over here to see. And so, if you chose one or the other, we'd go back, meet with the county and talk to them about it, and then probably a public meeting, I'm assuming, of some type to get the public involved and then drill down on the plans. Like I said, these are rough estimates, but
And I don't
a
know,
lot of work has to be done to get it to the final stage yet, though.
I don't know, Matt, if there's anything to be done while this is all being done, particularly with the utilities in the 700 and 800 block, the wires, drive through there's wires.
Disaster.
Yeah, I was wondering if something could be done with it.
So in that area, I guess they're overhead both sides, and then as you get a little down towards your area.
Once you cross into the 900 block, everything's on the
Yeah, and that makes.
east side of the street, on my side of the street. And so,
Sidewalks on both sides. We thought if we had a little bit bigger sidewalk on the opposite side where there is no utilities, you could also do some light landscaping, maybe some overhead lighting of some kind, shoebox or something like we have out in the rest of downtown. City lighting system, if you will. And, but yeah, all that has to be worked out.
oh, I'm sure. I'm just here to answer questions as to how we got to this point.
Leverage, but not a ton on that.
Well, to keep
Trying to get it organized.
this proposal moving forward, is there any action items you want from us today?
Well, if this committee were endorsed either just an overlay or more of a bigger project. Now, the budget we were talking about, we had $3 million sitting over on Monroe Street. And so that was up for grabs to what are we gonna do with it? That could be this money. And David said, well, 2 million-ish or more, So I would look at it, time to get everything going, maybe some utility stuff, but that would do this project, we feel like. And
I don't mean to interrupt, but the county is, well, I shouldn't speak, but I think they've been approached about this being a participating project, city-county project.
yeah, when I said the three, that's city, county.
Okay.
Together, yeah. And so but if you endorse one or the other or something like this, or you said, no, we don't like all that roundabout stuff, and that's good to know.
Any comments,
No, I would like to move this
proposal?
proposal down. I think it'll slow the traffic down.
It'll help immensely.
Yep, I would second that. Looks like a good plan.
Jackie, you got any?
No, I'm perfectly comfortable. It needs to be done.
Well, I think that speaks.
Yeah, if you endorse it, then we'll talk to the rest of the council about it at other times. We say, the committee endorsed it, and then when we go, the county goes over there, these guys heard it, but not the rest of them yet, so.
Or the others heard it too.
I didn't know if they heard this plan or not.
About this plan, they've heard about Madison Street.
We were in a hurry to come up with something that people might accept and
We'll do a roll call vote for endorsing this.
Deacon,
Aye.
Lester,
Aye.
Spicer,
Aye.
Schwartz, Spencer.
Aye.
Gentlemen, thank you all. If at any time, as this moves forward, you'd like me to come, just let me know, because as I said, I probably know more of the history of that whole area than anybody. Well, Mike's been around a long time too.
Well, I'm sure staff will keep you updated with the progress.
Well, they were very good about contacting me, and that's when I called David, particularly about my parking in that 900 to 1,000 block. That was the only issue I had. The rest of it is great.
We want to make sure we address that. I mean, you need that parking.
Okay.
You're an anchor business in that area, so we appreciate that.
Thank you all for.
And I don't know who I'm asking, but do we have a procedure or whatever we can do if there is a big funeral, for some police, to eliminate that no parking and allow it to be used?
Well, the problem is we don't know how big a funeral is going to be until they get there. I mean, we have ideas. Some of them are going to be pretty large, but some of them we think are going to be real large aren't, and some we don't think are. So it'd be, now I will mention to you, Mark, the police is very good about helping us when we have a large funeral procession of moving it across town. There's a lot of liabilities you can all imagine in funeral processions. And so the police department is excellent to work with, and we try not to overburden them when it's not every funeral. But we know we have a big one, but it would be very difficult to say that, at this particular time, you have to put out no parking signs, and it would be probably best for all if we got the 900 block on
That's
both
what
sides.
this shows.
Right.
That we
And
accommodated that in this.
and as I mentioned, if you go to the Capital Region Clinic, their driveway is right about there.
And it bumps out there.
Yeah, and it bumps out there. If you wanted to, you could put no parking on the west side from there up to the hospital. On the east side.
This plant.
Right. And on the east side, that is all already no parking. So in essence, the 1100 block would have no parking on both sides, which would accommodate the calming of the roundabout, and I think would accomplish a lot of what you're trying to do, or what we hope we're trying to do.
Again, thank you for attending this morning.
Again, if I can answer any questions anywhere, or you want me back at any meeting, just have Eric or somebody call me, and I'll be happy to be there. Thank you, gentlemen. And once again, I appreciate you considering this project.
Thank you. Well, it's got the full endorsement of this committee, and we're glad to push it forward. All right. Item C, wastewater farm lease. Mr. Seaman.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is actually the airport and wastewater land, so it's informational. Every 5 years, we gotta go out and seek proposals to farm the city-owned land. Kind of pointed that direction-ish. There you go. Sorry. Okay, so the airport ground is chopped up into about 13 fields surrounding the airport, leaning towards Hibernia and around the airport. It's comprised of about 202 acres total. The wastewater division, we've got land east of the airport. It's 6 larger fields. It's about 259 acres total. We also have a 40-acre parcel, and this would be sort of surrounding the ag business that's in North Jefferson City. So if you see so it'd be where the corn maze and the pumpkin patch is. That's in this area, and we maintain a 100-foot buffer around that since we do land application. So when we look for proposals, this isn't a strictly rent for revenue type of rent. So for instance, the airport, their reason for having the land is to protect the airspace and allow the airport to grow, in the future. And then our purpose would be to have land for biosolids land application. And that's been, that's actually taken a lot of decades essentially to get in the good graces of landowners and the EPA. We've, so like in the 1980s, we were in big trouble with land application, and we've had to, acquire land, spend our own money, do nutrient management and that sort of thing to remain in the good graces of everyone. Then of course the goals that we have for the land, airport, likes to reduce the mowing and also do invasive grass control. They're required to by FAA, and then, generate some revenue. And our goals would be to practice that nutrient management that we're required to by EPA with a dictated cropping schedule, and then also generate some non-rate revenue if we can. So when we lock into a 5-year contract, that allows us a good nutrient management, a crop rotation. It also gives farmers more confidence in purchasing commodities that they would need. Talk about the cropping schedule. It is super complicated. So we generally have a 5-year plan to, so that, EPA requires us to protect the soil, not have excess phosphorus and nitrogen. And then, so we've got all these fields and a dictated cropping schedule that we bid for that. So purchasing has received proposals this week, and they actually are confidential until they can be posted for the council meeting. So they would be posted and then first read in November 6th, and then if acceptable, approved on November 20th, and then we would have a contract at the beginning of the year. So it's kind of informational. Britt and Good Eric are here too if we've got any questions about the ground.
Good Eric's the airport.
I'm glad that we made that distinction.
There's another Eric in the room too.
Middle Eric.
County Eric and Planning Eric.
Any questions?
So this is coming up to a council meeting, like Eric said, it's not straight revenue, although on the airport side, we look at revenue pretty close because it's less about nutrients. It's more about, even like Eric said, the goals there. But that's one thing. So we look at them kind of holistically, but it's one big public works contract. And a lot of times there's a lot of questions about this type of contract, why we do what we do. But there's other things, so the contract we've had for many years is with Fisher Farms right outside the airport, and wastewater plant. So close proximity is a goal too, just because we're running equipment directly from the plant into the fields. And then we also try to work with those farmers if we can have additional ground to spread on if it's really wet or something like that. Some of the soil over there drains quicker. It may not be on our field, it may be on their field. So they're amenable to that. That helps with our process. So it's kind of a quick version.
Thank you very much for the information. We'll move to item D, rail spur transload facility funding. Mr. Bain.
Yes, thanks. Eric is eventually going to get up and talk about this. Grant, can we go back to that? Yes, thank you. So back in the beginning of the year, I'm not for sure when, it was March-ish, the city and county entered into an agreement to use joint city-county sales tax funds to fund the construction of the CART, which had been previously called the transload facility. So it's out in Algoa. Basically, it's a transfer facility from rail to truck. And so at that point in time, we signed an agreement to spend $800,000 of city-county funds, so $400,000 city, $400,000 county. And that was being matched with some other grant funds, et cetera. And so in that time, some of those costs have increased due to some design requirements by the railroad and then some other issues. And so Eric is going to talk about that a little bit more specifically. But where that money had come from the city's sort of allotments, we had originally $200,000 in economic development sort of earmarked within the HAZMAT capital improvement sales tax. And so the $400,000 is coming out of that category. Ultimately, back in March, when we sort of, that money was sort of reshuffled, we had left $1.8 million in that category. And so just as sort of in the event that something happened with the transload facility, and so, in some ways, here we are. But I'll let Eric kind of take over from there and talk about where they are with the funding of that project.
So, as David said, when we going through the process of acquiring the grants, and from the time that we had a pre-designed, very conceptual estimate of about $3.2 million till the time we actually bid the project, going through the Union Pacific process, just additional cost, inflation, everything. Project grew quite a bit. So when we, and to secure the grants, we had to commit to the extra funds. So the county had to commit to whatever funding was necessary to get the project under construction. So as it stands now, we bid the project for, or awarded it at $4.3 million and some change. With some change orders to date, we're a little over 4.5. Currently, there's a few additional costs coming due to some, rock where we thought dirt was, or dirt where we thought rock was. That's normal circumstances, but we're getting pretty close to the end. So this number, the 4.5 million, is going to go up a little bit, but not substantially. So where we stand now, there was $800,000 committed out of the joint funds, and the county had to commit that shortfall, or whatever you want to call it, of 1.1 million. So that we actually have that in our half-cent sales tax funds, but it's in our cooperative fund category right now. But that money could be moved depending on what's decided today. But so that's where it stands. And just some conversations, I think maybe a month or two ago at this meeting, mentioned the possibility of the city and county cooperating on the additional funds needed. So I don't know if you got any questions. The project itself is coming along very, very well. Track is going down right now. We are working with the operator. That's under an MOU with the operator, Capital Logistics, and working on some branding. We have a logo. They're working on marketing and just beginning that side of the facility, or for when it's done, we want to be able to actually start using it. Capital Oil Terminals, they won't be ready to start bringing in cars until towards the end of next year. But in that time frame, we want to be able to serve other customers as well. So it's an evolving process that's coming along very good, all things considered. So,
and is it my understanding we're already looking at potentially phase 2?
So yes,
phase such a success.
Great question. Yes, phase 2 would be an expansion of the siding towards the east, just behind Command Web, and that would expand the siding to triple the capacity that we have, roughly triple the capacity that we have right now to bring in cars. We're limited to how many times Union Pacific can come down and how many cars they can store on the siding. And right now it's 9. We can expand that to 27 with the additional siding. And that is in pre-design, getting it to the point that we could submit it to Union Pacific for their review. So when the time comes to expand that, Union Pacific, it'll be a quicker process. We won't come up with these, there won't be unknowns going into it. We'll know, and we'll have their approvals. And then if we need to seek funds either through the state or through other grants, we'll have that number to be able to present to them. So that's in the process. When the time comes, we'll be ready to jump on that when the opportunities exist for the funding.
Questions? Councilman Schwartz?
So quick math would be on the Madison Street piece, roughly 2 million. The 2 million, that's a million county, million cities that we're talking about. So then if we had 3.5 million in Monroe, that would leave $750,000 apiece that we could probably move towards this.
Do you have that other slide?
Yeah, that other slide.
There's another funny, so back here, we had some additional monies in Monroe now. We're spending roughly $1 million on that signal area down here by the highway, right?
Correct.
So there's savings there. Those savings on the Madison versus the other piece in Monroe. Here's somebody's phone. And then where is it?
Fourth line.
Yeah, economic development. So we hadn't spent all that yet anyway. And so there is money there. So my quick math was if we're to do this, we already have an agreement that we're sharing 800,000, 400 each. So you'd increase that to 600 more each, basically.
I think that's prudent where those dollars should come from.
Yeah, it's in this list of dollars, you know. Time we get to the end of it is where, you know, that last project is where we really, you know, try to meet the needs of each project as we go. Time you get to the end of this thing, you kind of, you know, you're hopefully approving the next one, but you kind of see where you're at and, you know, it kind of, and there'll be new things pop up, certainly. There may be more economic development things pop up, who knows?
Well, we're looking at phase 2. I'm sure that's going to be another city county cooperative effort.
Yes, and I think maybe Harry can speak to it. There's potential to get funding through the state again, go after that again. But having a solid number to go to them possibly this year or next would be a lot more, you know.
I think we, at the county, we'll work with our lobbyists. We thought we had a deal last session, and actually, you know, where you see we're 1.1 million short, I guess, on the other slide. We had another $2 million of revenue in there. Was not in the governor's original budget. House put it in, Senate put it in, passed it, vetoed, along with about 50+ million of other items. So we were in it until the last week, we thought, or until veto session. No, I'm sorry, until he vetoed it. And the veto message I thought was kind of ambiguous, but maybe it was for Mark. You probably follow that more than others do. But we intend to go over there with the tin cup and ask again and see what happens.
Wear some dark glasses. You know, have the cane.
Okay.
Generally plays pretty well.
I'm sure to add the inflationary piece.
All right. Well, so it's kind of.
So what we do probably is, if this group's agreeable, because that amount of money has to go through the council, we'd modify another agreement. We could probably I don't know if we're ready or not on the Monroe, on the Madison thing to at least, you know, put a placeholder in there. Maybe we can put both those on agreement, send it through the council and the commission, and then.
I think we can wait a few months, wait till the transload project is done and we know what that final cost is. And then we can roll Madison in at the same time, so.
We'll have better numbers on it.
I think we agree in principle where, you know, where those dollars will come from.
So it's here.
Could you say just a bit about the operation of the transload? Is it contracted out to an entity to operate it? And
So, getting to the point that it can operate, the county can't operate this. We're not in that business. In fact, we don't really want to be in the rail business. So the concept all along as we were going through this process to eventually get to where we hire somebody to operate it. Now that can look like, you know, we have a contract with them where they generate the revenue and, you know, maybe it doesn't cost the county at all. It may cost a little bit initially. We'll enter into that agreement at the first of the year. Right now, we have an MOU with Capital Logistics to set the groundwork and the framework to get all this in place. And so that will be between the county and the Capital Logistics. But yeah, it's in the process. And like I said, they're working on the marketing of it. Pretty good team doing that right now as we speak. So it's but they'll operate everything. They'll have the equipment to offload, unload. If there's a component of having to transport whatever from the rail by truck to wherever else, they would do all that as well.
that sounds like great economic development, enterprise. Will it generate tax revenue too?
That's what we expect, yes.
Now, I would point out the city, I guess we still have the road crossing inspection of that railroad out there. as a city facility. We had to redo it once. I don't think we did it as a city county project at the time, but we want to get in that mix of if there's any payback from
It would be our intent that when it's all said and done, that the rail crossing itself, which is just on Militia, so I don't know how it came to be that way, but the city actually has the crossing on Militia. The county has everything else.
deal that was cut at the time.
Yeah, we would want that all to be rolled into under this operator.
So try to make you aware that we budget and we have to inspect it through a company every year.
So what you're saying, man, is that there's an opportunity for a toll entry.
Could be. Yeah, the gate goes the other way.
Just joking.
Well, thanks for your time and
Thank you.
consideration, and we'll process.
There's a lot of exciting things that the city and county are working together on, and again, we really appreciate our colleagues at the commission who partner with us on a lot of things that make county and city better. So, thank you. Thanks. All right, project updates. Northwood Drive Sewer Extension, Mr. Seaman.
Let me kick this off real quick. So this was talked about in the budget process, and I checked with Sheila because I kind of lost track, to be honest. And this is not in the budget currently. And so, I think we've talked about both of these. Either I sent emails about them, I know, but I don't know if we talked about them in this meeting or not. I'm losing track. But we can kind of update on what they are and kind of dollar amounts, I guess. And I think Britt included some options for the airport one here. But really, next steps on like the Northwood, for example, the council would have to make it a project, or it could be we also maybe prior to that, it kind of it's chicken and egg a little bit. Go back to the residents out there and kind of have a meeting with them, talk about how the hookups would go and what costs that might be incurred, and kind of make sure we have the temperature right on all the residents out there, et cetera. And then bring that to the council as a project if that's what this committee wants to do. Could be opposite. You can make it a project, then we have the meeting and see where we get. But it's one of those that'll have to occur at some point. Both of those will have to occur. Sorry.
Well, and that's why I had Councilman Wright here this morning to maybe voice his opinion on this and give us some direction if you'd like. So.
Sure.
Well, let Eric, you can get the cost real quick. I mean, it's a pretty basic project.
Yeah, it's estimated at 200,000.
So we need some land. We're unsure of the rock. It hadn't been fully designed. We could probably design it in-house, but I think the number was kind of moving around until you get the final design and know. And then just like Eric's saying here, you don't always know where the rock is. You can spend a lot of time looking for rock and then you still miss it. So we put a factor in there and go with it and see where we're at. And it could be a change order up or down. But anyway, so that's why we're saying about 300 because not all the property is acquired yet either for this.
You still have the slides that we had before.
Do we have some? I don't think we have a picture, yes, but
I guess we could go have him.
Yeah, we could pull it up from last month.
yeah, we'll try to pull it up. Anyway,
Okay.
so while they're doing that, you guys can discuss. Okay.
Yeah.
What comfort or for as far as direction would you?
I mean, I would probably prefer the first option, just, proceed forward with it and then, get it designed, get everything lined out and know exactly, where it's gonna go and all that kind of thing, what it's gonna serve, and then the residents and have a meeting. That would be my preferred way to do the direction. One thing I would like to see, Eric, is that, definitely design this with expansion in mind, because there's definitely opportunities to go, if you came up to Southridge Drive right there, then I want, just the thought being, eventual extensions, because we've got folks across Rockridge, or of course in the county, that on the other portion of Southridge Drive, county there, all along Rockridge Drive, a road, I should say, along there, I've got, you can't see it on the slide here, but I've got a house, that I have as a rental house. You can see the piece of the ground that comes up there. at 2822 Rock Ridge, I mean, all of those are all septic along there as well. And, you know, I guess my thought would be just design it with you know, large enough capacity to be able to be extended, you know, when that time is right, because you know, you have to also think long term, you know, with the Wildwood extension, you know, coming through and teeing into Rock Ridge, you know, there's gonna, I mean, obviously with the Wildwood extension, you're gonna need to do some sewer extension from that point as well, and tie all this together eventually. So I would just want a long range view of being able to expand and have it built to, you know, capacity where it could be expanded. And I see that you've got the future sewer main coming right through there, which is good. But yeah, definitely don't want to have it under capacity. Just maybe over-engineer it a little bit so that.
Well, yeah, sewers like this, you know, they're all designed in the watershed, sewer shed, whatever you want to say. Usually, I think this would be 8-inch probably. I don't know if we looked at that. I assume so.
Right.
Yeah, and so 8-inch has capacity for expansion. It would more than well serve any of that right there. Then as you talk about going towards Wild, there's other little sewer sheds over there that have other plans to where how they connect and everything.
Right.
The ridge is at Rock Ridge. That's why
Right.
a lot of times in this area, in this part of the country, things are named ridges because of a reason. And so that falls the other direction. That doesn't mean a pump station couldn't be included over there at some point and bump back across. I mean, that happens, but 8 inches
Would be more than enough capacity.
So yeah, and you're limited by what you're tying into down. So that was all kind of set in motion as that sewer was built down through the basin towards Wares Creek, etc.
Right. Okay. So.
Now there was multiple plans for this. I think Eric had a plan originally. Talked to some residents out there that he would go in front of the houses. This is a little different plan. It could be either way. Still, it doesn't really matter to us. It's just you want you want the most people, and when you come by, you really they're going to be, you know, they'll have to hook up, and so there is some skin in the game on these folks, and so that's why I said, you know, we probably, I mean, this is a pretty good layout that's done here, so you could go for a public meeting. I feel like pretty quick, and we don't know that the full council supports the project yet, and they may or may not, but it just kind of depends on what the committee thinks first, and then I feel like we maybe, you know, this is schematic enough. You don't want to get too far along because everybody goes, no, it's got to go out the front, you know, for whatever reason. I don't know. I haven't talked to them.
Well, I mean, the residents, yeah, I mean, the residents that I've talked to, Kevin Kliegel, you know, and he's a contractor himself. He indicated that, you know, in the first proposal, you know, he didn't think that made any common sense to have it in front of the houses when basically all of the systems and everything and connections are all behind that, you know. And I agree with that.
Yeah.
You know, so I think, you know, we definitely need to get on contacting the Leshes for, you know, acquiring the property, that kind of thing. Due to the fact that, you know, they are very elderly in nursing homes, that kind of thing. So, you know, I think that's my priority, try to get a hold of somebody as we can secure the right of way to get the project done, because that could present a problem too.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if we get in a property dispute or whatever, you know, or the price is
Right.
unreasonable to the council.
Yeah.
So
So
it kind of stops it.
Yeah. So I mean, would that be appropriate to have city staff?
Well, I need I'm trying to get a gauge of this committee. You know, it's going to cost the full council $300,000-ish. You know, that's kind of a rough estimate at this point. If this group buys in that this is a need and all of that okay, we can go make some contacts, kind of see where we get.
That's kind of what I was.
To the full council.
For us to accomplish today was to, you know, move this along it morphs into another big issue too. I mean, we annexed this area. We've not fulfilled in my view, our obligation to make that a kind of a priority for a number of years. And if we're gonna be talking future annexations, growth of the city, we've gotta kind of clean up our own backyard, so to speak. And so I hate to be kind of the persistent one on this project, but I think it, like I said, it does morph into a bigger discussion, if you will. So, Councilman T.
You know, approximate cost to the homeowners?
You
Is
stick
that-
a
if
hole in the ground, you could easily get to 5-10 grand pretty quick, I'd say.
If it's not palatable, I mean,
Well, that's what I mean, you start messing with those systems, you're 5-10 grand.
And, you know, there's ways that we could work with them as far as.
There is a process in the code that they could basically borrow the money from the city and pay it back through
Special assessment?
an assessment type thing.
Special assessment, yeah.
I think the interest rate in the code is like 8%, so you're better off probably doing your own, but financing, but you know.
This day and age, though.
But as
You know.
as a realtor, you're in the realtor business. I mean, you know, an investment for a homeowner like that probably is a good sound investment for payback of if you do sell your property.
Absolutely. I think it's gonna be far more marketable, you know, to folks if you're on a city sewer compared to, you know, being on your own on-site system, so.
But I'm not the one.
Right, not the one putting the money out, right.
So,
Exactly, yeah.
but do you have, I mean, do you wanna, we could still, you know, as this committee, make a recommendation of moving this along, but I mean, if you wanna reach out to your constituents and just gauge their interest,
Sure, I would
you know,
do that. Yeah.
kind of somewhat firm on a concept, if you will.
Mhm.
That makes it a little bit easier to have that discussion, but I like, I mean, you know, I'm one of this committee, but if we move this along, I kind of want to keep it going. We want to make it a priority for this project.
Well, sounds like we could do is work with Councilman Wright.
Yeah.
To work with the neighbors and see where we're at first. And then, like I said, if we were to build it, nobody hooks and wants to hook up, or we cause a big stir, probably not what we're wanting to do either. Go from there.
I'm on board with that.
Got it.
Thank you very much. Item 2, airport project.
Yes, there's a memo in your packet that kind of outlines the cost. Councilman Schwartz had asked staff to take a look at making some improvements to our parking lot. And then there's an existing fence that when our tenant who built the new terminal building with the restaurant, which we've kind of termed the administration building for the airport, they upgraded our fencing, which, you know, our old fencing is just chain link fence, in some cases has some barbed wire on the top of it. Whenever they did their project, they installed a much nicer fence. It's a wrought iron style fence. It's not wrought iron, but you know, it looked like a wrought iron fence. It is a very nice look. Councilman Schwartz, after talking with some of our tenants, wanted to take a look at the parking lot area to see what we can do to make that more inviting to our tenants and our customers. So we've laid out a couple of different options here. One would be to resurface the parking lot, mill and overlay it, upgrade the fence. There's actually a little bit of stormwater improvements that needs to be done regardless of this project, to be honest with you. We have a lot of things that need to be done, but in looking at it, I actually installed this trench drain, my very first project working for the city in 1995. So I'm proud to say it's lasted a good amount of ways, but it is at its service life, kind of like me. So then also the entrance road, we were to overlay it. Those two projects together, rounding up, $350,000 to $400,000 worth of work. There is another alternative that I believe would actually be, I'm not gonna say it's equal, but would maybe accomplish the same goal. Again, we would still need to do that stormwater repair. There would be some pavement repairs that are out there. We have some, when we actually did some improvements to the parking lot area associated, after the flood, and put in some concrete islands with curbs and gutters and et cetera, and some stormwater improvements, but it's got concrete all the way to the surface in the middle of an asphalt parking lot. So we'd want to do some work on that to get those back to, an asphalt surface over the top of those concrete. And then we could do a seal coat. The seal coating was actually done recently out at the mall. If you want to take a look at what we're talking about, some people call it painting the surface black. It does have a purpose of sealing up the pavement, but it's a much less costly treatment than a mill and overlay to the entire surface. And then we got a lot of asphalt out there. We'd still do the fence repair, and then with that entrance road, instead of doing a mill and overlay on that, we could look at putting that as one of our microsurface projects that we have been doing in some of our neighborhood streets, and I think it would serve us well. That cost, rounding up to about $200,000. So it does reduce the costs somewhere close to half if we take that route. Either of those would be good options and give us really good service life. And as we talk about the gateway to the city, I think we would certainly improve our look for folks that come in to visit our community through the airport. Be happy to answer any questions.
Well, we had a recent success as it associates with the airport of the air show. That was clearly a great event for our community, the surrounding community, and I just think we have to make some investment, not only for that to be ongoing, but for the everyday user of that facility. So, open it up to any questions of the committee. Councilman Schwartz.
Explain to me the mill and overlay versus the ceiling. Does the ceiling take care of the typical holes we get from parked vehicles on asphalt and things like that?
Yeah, it does.
Flatten it out.
It does. It actually is a better treatment for a lot of parking lots because it seals. If you get oil dripping or gas dripping or diesel dripping, it's going to impact the asphalt. The ceiling's nothing's perfect, but it does help that be a runoff as opposed to being soaking in. That's the primary use for sealing is in parking lots because that's where your cars dwell. Out on a road, you're not. I mean, if you are dripping, but it's a drip every however often. But if a car sits there for a day or 2 days, in some cases, people get on the airplane for a week, you can get quite a bit of dripping. And the seal coating is a much better treatment for that. So I think there's a lot of value to going that route. Certainly not saying that we shouldn't do the overlay. I'm just saying it is a good, cheaper option, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Can we do a hybrid where we overlay like the main parking lot and then seal the road in and?
Absolutely, we could do that. We could do the areas closer to the restaurant, which are the more daily use areas, and then seal some of the, outer parts. Certainly, and that would, obviously that number would then be somewhere between 200 and 350, somewhere in the middle there. But
I just want to make sure that whatever we do, we don't improve anything of the governor's highway patrol area for vetoing our ARF truck. FYI.
Okay, I do know where to cut now. All right.
So how long does that seal last?
It varies. We had actually seal coated our parking lot, too long ago. And then we had a flood and we had some other things. Depending on, if you talk to the manufacturer, they're probably going to tell you should do it again every 3 to 5 years. I really think you can do it more like every 5 to 7 with the sealing and keep your pavement in pretty darn good shape that way. But obviously, if you're selling the product, you want it to be a shorter time frame.
With potential flood areas, that is, definitely sealing it though is an advantage, regardless. I mean,
Yeah, even if we were to do a mill and overlay, at some point we would want to do a seal coat, a seal on it down the road.
Does the committee have any desire or recommendation? Staff? on this?
I mean, I just want to get it done as soon as possible. It does not look good out there right now.
I agree with Councilman Swartz, but we're in tight budgetary right now. We've got the buy-in from the last 8 years, so if we can get by with the overlay, if you think it'll work and give us a good product, I hate to do stopgap, but if it's, you know, $250,000 still a lot of money, and if it's not gonna last that long, I'm not an engineer, I'm not a road engineer, but right now, cheaper option looks more palatable for me. I don't know how long this lasts. If you have to come back and do it again in a couple of years, well, you're just throwing your money away. So we have to rely on staff, what they think is the best bang for the buck right now.
The thing about the seal coat is, even though it's less money, as soon as you come back in a few years and do it again, it looks brand new. Like if you go out to the mall, that's why they like to do it out there, because it really gives you a nice look, you know, for a few years, and then you got to do it again. But if you do an overlay, yeah, I mean, it's a structural deal, but you know, you don't get that black and fresh look to it. If we're after aesthetics a little bit as well, a nice seal coat every so often would be a good plan. I mean, that's why malls and shopping areas like to do that.
You know, actually, I apologize. I should have thought Councilman Swartz brings a good idea of a hybrid
There
approach.
could be some
I think that, you know, that would give us some direction. And we could start developing the project. When we develop the project, you could, you know, bring it back, give you an idea of what that cost would be. We're beyond season. We're not going to get it done this year either way. You know, we could have something, you know, conceptually with some better cost in that hybrid system and ready for spring.
Again, my goal for this discussion was to show to staff that this committee's committed to getting this project done. So,
and then we anticipate this would come out of that excess capital money that we had talked about in the budget, is what your guys are thinking?
well, or even with the current allocations of the sales tax, if there's.
It would come from sales tax money, I think is really what we would need to know. And we could start developing that project, and, you know, we would bring forward a project that eventually that would have a reappropriation and a, you know.
Are we allowed to tap into even a little bit of economic development dollars? For this, to do
City
this?
county?
Yes, but
all those monies were city county.
that's city county dollars, okay.
That's all city county.
Okay.
Which we could. We're doing railroads.
Callaway though.
Wrong side of the river.
Well, that's true. We could get ahead of them though, and then they could pay us back.
No, I mean, there is a certain amount of economic development.
Forget about the river.
Right. But never mind, okay.
But, you know, if the council, I mean, if the committee wants to get direction, we'll develop a big, you know, this is a little bit more than a napkin estimate, but, you know, we could drill down a little bit further.
I agree with Councilman Schwartz that, I mean, probably that combination would be well.
It would be worth looking into.
Okay, we'll do.
So we're good with that? I mean, you got enough direction?
I think so.
I think so.
Okay. All right, item 5, other old business.
I had one more thing. I didn't even think about it at the time, but regarding the operator of the rail spur, November 10th, we are going to host an informational meeting with prospective customers. Be a pretty good list of people hopefully come in, and they'll go through some basics on what to expect and how somebody might be able to use it. And then November 8th at the council meeting, there'll be a presentation, basically an update. And then November 9th at the county commission meeting. And then, so we've called it the transload, the multimodal and all that. We need to, and I even fail to do it sometimes, transition into calling it the CART, the Capital Area Rail Terminal. So going forward, you know, and it's branded that. We got a nice logo that they're working on, so.
That informational meeting with prospective customers, you said that's the 10th?
November 10th, Wednesday.
And where would that be?
I don't know yet. They're still working on location. Okay. So that will all be coming soon.
Okay, good, thank you. Any other old business? Seeing none, we'll go to item 6 on reports. And Ms. Cinzy's not here.
Yeah, just to get an update, Ms. Cinzy was unexpectedly out of the office today, so I will be giving kind of some brief updates on a couple of her grants, but I might roll it into item C, so if it's okay, I might go ahead and kick that back over for the sales tax update and then do all mine all at once within the item C, if that's okay.
That sounds like a plan. So we'll go to B, sales tax project report.
Yes, so I included that in the packet. There's not a lot of change this quarter. We don't have a lot of projects going on. We did spend about just shy of $14,000 additionally for design work at MSP. We spent almost $250,000 working on the Air Street stormwater projects, and then just a couple of $1,000s finishing up the stormwater work that was on Jackson Street. So those are really the changes that have happened since the last quarter.
Thank you, sir. Hand it off to you.
All right, thank you. So in the packet, we included, we had done, I think, our previous time, kind of the first time we did a quarterly report. A lot of it's just for informational purposes. The business license information's in there in case anybody wants to kind of look what's occurred within the city in the last quarter. We do include the construction permits for the last year. A couple things I'll note on that. Probably our best quarter within this last 3 months for new single-family construction, although it is only 5, but that's probably our best 3-month period within the last 12 months. Had about 11 demolitions during that time, some city, some private-based, and even though it does represent a loss of housing, most of those were housing. I think it's good to kind of point out that a lot of those were not in use as housing. Really, it's kind of, I think you would look at it as something clearing the site to make way for new housing going forward. So it's information we'd like to track and kind of present. So we can kind of have these metrics available. So when we talk about housing, we kind of have a better idea of what's actually been happening within the city for the last time period or so. That kind of takes it into some new information. I did want to give some updates on some of the subdivisions that came through the city here this last year. For those that weren't, actually, I think most of these did occur after I think our new council took place in April. We did have 4 subdivisions this year, creating some new buildable lots, which is important to note that we hadn't had any for the last 2 years. So approximately about 50 lots, 60 lots were created. One of those I will kind of give you a quick update. So Edwards Ridge was a single-family residential subdivision along Route CC, about 25 single-family lots. So that was preliminary at the time. We have received a final plat, and so that's a good indication that one, they've done the engineering work for that site, so it's going through the process of review. We would expect to see that in front of council hopefully in the next few months or so, with hopefully maybe some groundbreaking and some work going on in the spring. That's entirely up to the developer, of course. Timelines can't change, but just kind of give you a little bit of precursor to what we might see come down the pike there.
Clint, if I could ask real quick, it is a little frustrating, or lack of a better descriptor there, when, a lot of these proposals for development come before the council, we pass them and then we kind of don't see the working on it. And one that comes to mind is Marshall Street, where that was a proposal, I believe, of nine lots, I believe. Just, kind of curious of where that's at in the
process. I'll take let me look at that. That one's not coming right off the top of my head.
I think it's
doesn't necessarily mean that it's not right there.
I know Paul Sampson with DQ Rep was looking into each of those, and he may have some information. I would hope so, but I've been wondering the same thing.
Yeah, it's a good point. We spoke with JC Rep about some of these subdivisions we have in town that have either ones that are new, ones that have been in place for a little bit. I think they're kind of actively trying to reach out and kind of facilitate a little bit of interest in those sites, kind of get things going. So we appreciate their help, and anything we can do to partner with them, we're always available for that.
I had a question about that. You mentioned those 50 lots. Is that including the one that the county bought and is going to put the juvenile justice center?
No, I don't think it does. So these are mostly residential subdivisions from that standpoint, but But that one I'm not sure of. I have to double check.
That was gonna be some duplexes over there
Yeah,
by St. Mary's, you know, and it was a pretty good sized development, but then the county ended up with it, just so you all, if you're not aware, they're looking at juvenile justice center there, so that took those lots back.
Right.
Whatever they were, I don't remember how many.
It was 25.
I think it's
Like
25.
25, yeah.
Sorry to interrupt, thank you.
No, that's fine. And so just kind of continuing on, I think on the development and housing standpoint. So just a quick update on our two low-income housing tax credit applicants. So we had a couple come before council seeking resolutions of support that were Stronghold Landing and Wildwood Canyon. One of those Stronghold Landing was also making use for our CDBG disaster recovery funds as well. So they will be having a public hearing at MHDC for the multifamily rental production program there. That public hearing will be November 2nd. So we'll know a little more information about that, but I think the final decision on the wording of those would be in December at some point. So hopefully we'll get more information about the coming of some affordable apartment units in town. So we'll keep tabs on that and provide any kind of updates we have as we go along. Switching gears a little bit to historic preservation. Historic preservation did have the consultant H3 come in to discuss some of the new design guidelines they've been working for kind of consolidating our different districts and our conservation areas and producing a kind of consolidated design guideline approach for all these so that there's a little more consistency within the city. So they presented on Tuesday evening what they're calling about a 50% draft of those design guidelines. During that discussion, it was mentioned kind of that 400 block, I think, of Capitol Ave being one of those areas within a conservation district. There was some interest in kind of reviewing what the development might be in that site. So they actually did put together kind of a visual representation of some of that building form that you could construct given the standards that are in place right now. And they talked a little bit about what it might look like if we wanted to loosen some of those standards to allow something a little more dense or a little more intensive given its kind of proximity to the downtown. So I think there was some interest in that. So we could probably share, I think, some of that information with the committee if they would like, as far as where those standards are right now.
Was that on the Capitol?
Yes, on the Capitol, specifically that 400 block.
Okay.
Talked a little bit about, yeah. Some of those lots, especially on the north side, are very narrow. So if the standards were that there would be no further subdivision, then you're going to get very small footprints. But if there was allowed for some consolidation, you could get some larger development going in some of those locations.
And again, when I spoke with developers, you know, their main concern was the constraints of materials and those kinds of things. And having some alternatives, if you will. So I think there is, I know I've mentioned it a few times, and we need to look at loosening a little bit of those restrictions so we can encourage development in those areas. So,
and we pass that along. So I think the hope is that they'll have a couple options there, maybe for what that might look like.
and then do we need to change that to the full council?
Yeah, so that should come through full council. It would be a code change, so that should come. They should have a public hearing in the future, and I think it will actually go through planning and zoning as well. I have to double check that because they're actually having a kind of a similar process going through historic preservation code rewrite committee that is looking at kind of the administrative side on how you create districts, and so kind of parallel processes going on that kind of tie in together. But yeah, ultimately they would need to come back to the city council for approval.
So at that meeting you referenced, were developers involved in that meeting?
Not at that meeting that I'm aware of. I could check with the consultant to see what kind of outreach they've done. I'm not quite as familiar with that process of it, so I'll kind of get myself up to speed and see.
Yeah, because that really is the genesis of this. I really hope that sooner than later the developers and contractors get involved with some of those discussions.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yep. And kind of staying a little bit with housing, just kind of give an update. So staff, as well as with Councilman Lester, we were invited to participate in a housing solutions workshop. Susan Cook-Williams with the Habitat for Humanity kind of initiated this process, and really what it is a, I don't want to say intensive, but it's a 3-week-long process where we'll be participating in webinars with other communities. I think there's about a half dozen other ones to discuss where they're at with their housing situation and what strategies they've put in place to address some of those concerns. And so I think the intent here is to be able to kind of share our concerns with these communities and get feedback from them, and to learn about what they've done in their municipalities as well, to kind of bring to bear, I think, the resources needed to address some of the housing issues. So we had our first kickoff one this past Tuesday, and we'll have another one this afternoon. So I think the intent there is, after the 3 weeks, is to have a little bit of a framework in which to kind of move, I think, some of our housing strategies, which we do have some strategies and goals from our housing study, kind of best way to kind of expedite that and get things moving, I think, on our end. So we did the subdivision update. Also, the last thing, and Grant, if he's in there, if he could pull up those pictures. So I think Councilman Spencer, actually, you had mentioned wanting an update on the cemetery a little while back, I think maybe during the budget. So that was a project that we had, I think was budgeted fall of last year, that we had started. And council had allocated, I think, $30,000, some of that in ARPA fund money, for doing some work on the cemetery. Specifically, this is Longview Cemetery. So there was some fence issues that needed to be addressed there. And so what we've done, I think, for this year, kind of phase 1, is clean out the fence. So it was very overgrown. So before we do any type of actually fence restoration or work on it, we had to clear out all the brush and materials. So that's happened here over this last year, as you can kind of see from that. Some small trees were also removed from around a lot of the gravestones. Some barbed wire that was in there was removed. So hopefully this next year we're going to put out some proposals for actually doing some additional work. In the Old City Cemetery, there's a couple trees that are dying or dead that need to be removed. So that'll be some of the work that we're going to continue to do this year as well. So far I think it's looking good. It's looking better. We're going to keep working on it. And that is everything I have for update, but I have to answer any questions or provide any other information.
Any questions? Chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Thank you all very much. Appreciate your time.
I would mention Brian was intending to be here, but we probably didn't get it scheduled right, with him being new and get it on his calendar too. So he'll probably be at the next one, but he had another meeting scheduled this morning.